My beloved child, a silence settled in that room only a few hours ago, and yet that silence was louder than any voice she had heard all day. The air around her changed so suddenly that even she paused and looked around as if something invisible had entered and stood beside her. She had been doing something ordinary, something simple, something she had done many times before, but in one small moment everything around her began to feel different. The light near the wall looked softer, the sound outside seemed farther away, and her own heartbeat became the loudest sound she could hear. Do not skip this moment, because something huge is waiting for you in what happened next. She did not understand at first why her hands stopped moving. She looked toward the corner of the room as though her heart had noticed something before her eyes could explain it. There was no loud sound, no dramatic sign, no sudden movement anyone else would have noticed, yet inside her spirit there was a feeling so unusual that she could not ignore it. She stood still, thinking perhaps it would pass, but instead the feeling grew stronger, deeper, and more impossible to dismiss. Stay till the end, because what happened after that was not something she expected to experience on an ordinary day. The room carried a memory she had not planned to revisit. A thought entered her mind without warning, and it was connected to someone she had not spoken about openly for a long time. She remembered words, faces, promises, and moments she thought had already faded. Yet in that hour, every forgotten detail returned with unusual clarity, as if time itself had opened a hidden page only for her. She slowly sat down, trying to understand why her eyes suddenly filled with emotion without any clear reason. Nothing outside had changed, but inside her, everything had shifted. She looked toward the door, then toward the window, and then back at the quiet room, wondering why it suddenly felt as if something important had just passed through that space. Do not skip, because this part matters more than it seems. At that exact time, she noticed something small on the table, something that had been there before, something ordinary, yet now it carried meaning she had never attached to it. She touched it carefully, and the moment her fingers reached it, another memory surfaced, stronger than the first one. A sentence she once heard returned to her exactly as it had been spoken, word for word, tone for tone, as if the past had decided to speak again. Her breathing changed. She was no longer sitting in a normal evening. She was sitting inside a moment that felt connected to something unfinished. Even the quiet around her felt as though it was holding its breath. She stood again, walked 2 steps, stopped, and looked back as if expecting an answer from the room itself. Something huge is waiting for you, because what she felt next was not fear, not confusion, and not sadness alone. It was the strange certainty that something important was about to unfold. She did not know whether it was a realization, a message inside her heart, or simply the moment when hidden truth becomes impossible to ignore. There are moments when a room becomes more than walls and furniture. There are moments when the smallest corner begins to hold emotion stronger than words. That was exactly what happened. The room where she stood became the place where old questions returned and where silent answers began to form. She moved toward the mirror, looked at herself, and for several seconds said nothing. Her own reflection looked unfamiliar because the expression on her face had changed. She looked like someone who had just understood something without hearing it spoken aloud. Her eyes carried surprise, but also recognition, as if deep inside she already knew why this moment had arrived. Stay till the end, because the next feeling was even more powerful. A sound reached her ears from outside, simple and ordinary, yet it arrived exactly at the moment her thoughts became intense. That sound seemed to confirm what she had already begun to feel. That this was not a random hour, not an ordinary evening, and not a passing emotion. She returned to the center of the room and sat again, but this time with full attention, as if waiting. Waiting for what, she could not explain. Yet something inside told her not to move too quickly, not to leave, not to distract herself, because something unfinished was finally reaching her heart. Do not skip now, because this is where everything becomes deeper. She remembered a conversation from long ago, one sentence that had once sounded small but now felt powerful. At the time, she did not understand its meaning. But only a few hours ago, sitting in that same room, she suddenly understood why those words had stayed hidden in her memory for so long. The room had become a place of realization. The quiet had become a voice. The ordinary had become unforgettable. And before the hour ended, she understood that this moment would stay with her far longer than she expected. Something huge is waiting for you, because what she realized in that room was only the beginning. A few minutes later, the stillness inside that room became even more unusual, because she suddenly noticed that the same thought kept returning no matter how hard she tried to focus on something else. It was not a random memory anymore. It was specific, clear, and deeply connected to a moment she believed had already passed forever. She looked again toward the same corner of the room, and this time her expression changed, because she realized that what she was feeling was growing stronger instead of fading. Do not skip, because this is the moment where everything became impossible for her to ignore. She stood slowly, as if afraid that even one quick movement would break whatever was unfolding around her. The room remained quiet, yet inside that quiet she felt as though a hidden answer was moving closer. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. And what happened next made her sit down again immediately. On the nearby shelf was an object she had not touched in a long time. She had passed by it many days without attention, but only now it seemed to call her eyes toward it. She reached for it carefully, held it in her hands, and the instant she looked at it closely, another forgotten detail returned with full force. A voice she once heard long ago came back into her mind so clearly that it almost felt present in the room. The exact tone, the exact pause between words, the exact feeling behind the sentence, everything returned at once. Her eyes widened because she had not expected memory to arrive with such power. She lowered her head for a moment, thinking perhaps she was imagining too much, but the feeling inside her heart refused to leave. It became clearer that this hour carried something unusual, something she had never experienced in exactly this way before. Do not skip, because even the smallest detail around her began to feel connected. The curtain near the window moved slightly, though the air felt still. A faint sound from outside reached her ears at the exact second another memory opened inside her mind. She remembered a promise once spoken casually, a sentence she had almost forgotten, but now it returned with meaning she had never understood until that very hour. Something huge is waiting for you, because she suddenly realized why this room felt different. It was not only the place she was standing in, it was the place where many silent emotions had remained unfinished. She slowly walked toward the window and looked outside, but her attention was not on what she saw. Her attention stayed inside her thoughts. She understood now that her heart was connecting pieces she had left scattered for too long. Stay till the end, because what happened next surprised even her. She turned back toward the bed, and at that exact moment she noticed something she had not seen earlier, a small folded paper near the side, almost hidden in plain sight. She could not remember placing it there recently. She reached for it carefully, unfolded it, and paused before reading. Her breathing changed again. The words were simple, but their timing felt extraordinary. It was not about how many words were written. It was about why she found them exactly now, exactly when her emotions had already become impossible to explain. Do not skip, because this moment carried a strange weight she could not deny. She read the line once, then again, and each time it felt more connected to everything she had been sensing since the beginning of that hour. She sat quietly, holding the paper, staring at nothing for several seconds. It was as if the room itself had waited until she was ready to notice what had always been near her. Something huge is waiting for you, because the truth forming inside her was becoming clearer. Some moments do not arrive loudly, yet they change how everything feels afterward. She looked toward the door again, almost expecting someone to appear, but no one came. The room stayed silent, yet that silence now felt full of meaning. And deep inside, she knew this was not the end of what had begun there only a few hours ago. Then the room became even quieter than before, the kind of quiet that makes every tiny movement feel important. She placed the folded paper beside her and remained still, because now her thoughts were moving faster than her hands. The words she had just read did not leave her mind. Instead, they opened another layer of memory she had not expected to face that day. Do not skip, because this next moment changed the meaning of everything she had already felt. She looked at the clock without truly reading the time, then looked back toward the same place where her attention had been returning again and again, as if that corner of the room was holding an answer she could almost reach but not fully understand. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and this is where her heart began to recognize a pattern. The same feeling, the same memories, the same quiet pull, none of it was random anymore. It all seemed connected, as if several unfinished moments had chosen the same hour to return together. She stood again and took slow steps across the room. Every object around her now looked familiar in a new way, as though ordinary things were carrying silent meanings she had never noticed before. A chair near the wall, a book left unopened, a small reflection in the mirror, each detail felt linked to a story she had not fully understood until now. Then she paused suddenly. A sentence she had heard long ago returned with complete clarity, not just the words but the feeling behind them. At that time, the sentence had sounded small, almost ordinary. But only now did she understand why it had stayed hidden in her memory all this time. It was as if that sentence had been waiting for this exact hour to reveal its weight. Do not skip, because her expression changed the moment that understanding reached her. She sat down again, but this time there was no confusion in her eyes, only deep attention, as though she finally knew she was standing inside a moment she would remember for a very long time. Something huge is waiting for you, because while she sat there, another detail caught her attention. Near the edge of the room was something slightly out of place, something small enough to ignore on any normal day, yet impossible to overlook now. She moved closer and noticed that it was exactly where her eyes had not looked before, almost as if it had remained hidden until this moment. She reached carefully, lifted it, and held it in silence. The feeling that followed was immediate. Her breathing slowed, her eyes softened, and once again she felt that unusual certainty that the room was not ordinary anymore. Stay till the end, because what happened inside her heart at that second mattered more than anything visible around her. She understood that the strongest moments do not always arrive with noise. Sometimes they arrive through recognition, through that sudden knowing that something meaningful has just connected inside you. She looked around once more, this time not with confusion, but with the quiet awareness that something had shifted forever. The same walls, the same light, the same silence, yet none of it felt the same anymore. Do not skip now, because the next realization came gently but powerfully. She understood that she had entered that room carrying ordinary thoughts, but now she was leaving with something entirely different, a feeling that one hidden chapter had quietly opened. The paper on the bed, the memory in her mind, the object in her hand, the silence around her, all of it now formed one complete moment. Something huge is waiting for you, because she knew deep inside that what began only a few hours ago in that room had not finished speaking yet. By the time the next few moments arrived, she no longer felt that she was simply sitting inside a room. It felt as though she had stepped into a pause between past and present, where every quiet detail around her was carrying a message she had once missed. The air remained calm, yet her thoughts had become sharper than ever, and she could feel that something unfinished was moving closer to full understanding. Do not skip, because this was the part she would later remember more clearly than anything else. She looked again at what she was holding, then placed it down carefully, almost respectfully, as though even the smallest movement deserved attention now. The room had become deeply personal, not because anything dramatic had appeared, but because meaning had entered every ordinary detail around her. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the next realization arrived without warning. She noticed that the same memory which had returned earlier was now connecting to another one, and together they formed something she had never seen clearly before. Separate moments from different days suddenly fit together as if they had always belonged in the same story. She stood near the mirror again and this time looked longer at her own reflection. Her face carried calm, but behind that calm was recognition. She understood now why her heart had refused to ignore the silence of that room. Sometimes the truth reaches quietly, but once it arrives, it changes the way every previous moment looks. Then she heard a faint sound again from outside, simple and ordinary, yet perfectly timed. It made her turn her head instantly, and for one brief second she felt as if the world outside the room had paused just enough to let her understand what was happening inside it. Do not skip, because this next feeling stayed with her more strongly than she expected. She walked slowly toward the door, touched the handle, but did not open it immediately. Instead she stood there, thinking about how different she felt from only an hour before. She had entered this room carrying routine thoughts, but now she stood there with the weight of a moment that felt impossible to call ordinary. Something huge is waiting for you, because before leaving, she looked back one final time. The bed, the table, the quiet corner, the folded paper, every small detail now looked connected, as if the room itself had held this moment until she was ready to understand it. And then one final thought arrived, clearer than all the others. It was not only about what happened in the room. It was about why it happened now. Why those memories returned today, why that silence felt so powerful, why her attention was drawn again and again to the same details. The answer did not come in loud words, but in a quiet certainty she could not deny. Stay till the end, because this is where everything became unforgettable. She realized that some moments arrive softly because they are meant to be felt deeply, not quickly. If they arrived loudly, they might be forgotten. But when they arrive in silence, they remain. She opened the door slowly, yet before stepping out she paused once more, because deep inside she knew that the room had given her something she would carry beyond that evening. Do not skip now, because even after she left, the feeling remained. The hallway outside looked ordinary, but she was no longer carrying an ordinary heart. She had entered 1 hour earlier as someone moving through a normal day, yet now she carried the weight of realization, memory, and quiet understanding. Something huge is waiting for you, because what began only a few hours ago in her room had not ended there at all, it had only just begun to shape what came next.